Buenas tardes, Death Battle. Estoy sorprendido con la magnífica aceptación que tuvo el anterior. No, en serio, o sea, 4500 penitas. Joder, se lo merece. O sea, no yo, o sea, el vídeo. Porque joder, es que la anterior fue muy buena. Y yo pensaba que no tendría visitas porque Invencible y The Boys, la verdad es que no lo ve nadie, llega así. Así que estoy contento porque fue buenísima la puta pelea. Pero bueno, obviamente va a ganar Magneto, ¿vale? O sea, no vamos a soñar con... Va a ganar Magneto, ¿vale? Va a ganar Magneto de paliza, ¿no? Esta pelea es una estupidez. Pero bueno, vamos a ver qué tal está, a ver si es buena. Es como, bueno, esto también era putamente obvia. Así que, no por ser obvia tiene que ser mala. Pero bueno. Vamos a darle, vamos a darle.
Post.
Es como Saitama sabemos que va a ganar.
Magneto, Marvel's mutant master of magnetism.
Tetsuo, Akira's telekinetic terror of Neo-Tokyo.
These two maestros of kinesis have ignited revolution not just in their worlds, but also the very mediums they exist
Solo para que
within.
entendáis algo, ¿vale? La telequinesis es mejor que el magnetismo. Porque literalmente la telequinesis puede hacer magnetismo. O sea, Tetsuo debería ganar, pero es un personaje de cómic Magneto. En un capítulo Magneto puede mover un par de puentes con mucho esfuerzo. En otro le puede arrancar el adamante y una lobenda. Y en otro puede controlar los polos de la Tierra con el magnetismo. O sea, mierda de cómics.
He's Wiz and I'm Boomstick.
And it's our job to analyze their weapons, armor, and skills to find out who would win a death battle. In the short duration of modern civilization, likely no conflict tested humanity more than the Second World War. In the primary Marvel 616 universe, this fact is no different, especially to the Eisenhart family and their only son.
You may know him as Magnus, Eric, or Max, but if you ask him, he'd say his true name is Magneto.
As a Jewish child in Nazi Germany, Magneto's early life was, well, extremely traumatic.
Even after eventually escaping certain death with his future wife, misfortune always followed wherever he went.
Thanks to his unexpected mutation called the X gene, the mark of a superhuman. After settling down in Russia with his new family, the KGB quickly found out about this quirk, so they burned his house down with his own daughter inside.
Naturally, he snapped and killed them all. I don't blame him, I'd do that too. Too bad his wife didn't get it and ditched him though. But that's when Magneto made a choice. Since humans hurt him his entire life, he'd do the same to them in the name of mutants everywhere.
At first, Magneto turned to the telepathic powerhouse Charles Xavier and his fledgling team of heroes. But his new friend wasn't thrilled with the idea of, subjugating the human race. So, Magneto formed his own team of mutants, the Brotherhood.
Magneto can telekinetically move, bend, and reshape any metal he's aware of. Bullets, vehicles, buildings, you name it. Even himself when he manipulates his personal magnetic field for flight and energy barriers.
Magnetokinesis is far more versatile than it would appear at first glance. The blood in your body has iron in it. The air has traces of lead and mercury. Whole mountains are lined with metallic ore. The Earth itself is surrounded by a literal magnetic field.
So many toys for Maggie to play with. He can detect magnetic fields at such a huge range, he can even pinpoint Earth's magnetic rays while stranded on a planet in another galaxy. And guess what? He was able to use those rays to pull himself back to Earth in a single day.
His range is even more remarkable than that. Did you know that in 1820, physicist Hans Christian Ørsted discovered that electric currents, like those of electrons and protons and atoms, produce their own magnetic fields? Magneto can fine-tune his control to affect these very subatomic particles. Dummy here will illustrate such a particle, with positively charged protons and negative electrons.
My life is as meaningless as an atom is small.
So what you're saying is Magneto could, like, yank one of those out?
Correct, potentially changing an atom's entire chemical makeup. However, neutrons do not have a charge, and without the ability to adjust those to accommodate the change in atomic mass, the atom would become unstable and...
Finally!
Do that. Magneto's...
Técnicamente, si se pudiese sacar un átomo el electro, ¿no? Generarías antimateria, lo cual haría un agujero negro. Pero bueno, cómics.
violent protest against humankind clashed with Xavier's peaceful reconciliation, not unlike the ideologies taught by Malcolm X and Dr. King, by whom Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were inspired. Magneto would spend most of his career pushing Xavier away to prove his philosophy superior, which meant doing battle with Xavier's school of thought, quite literally.
And Baldy's mind powers are no joke, but thanks to Magneto's psionic repelling helmet, Professor X couldn't touch him. Magneto survived Cyclops' earth-splitting laser, absorbed the power of the sun to battle Iron Man, ripped the adamantium skeleton out of Wolverine's body, and even taken on Hercules himself. You know, the Greek legend, Zero to Hero, the guy who held up the skies of Olympus for Atlas? that Hercules.
Seems sensible. Magneto once used the Earth's magnetic field to overwhelm the Phoenix Force, which can effortlessly destroy planets, let alone far more.
Hell, if he really wanted to, Magneto could totally just fling the Earth off its axis.
It's entirely possible he may have eventually resorted to just that. Over time, it became clear Magneto's war was doing far more harm than good for his fellow mutants, however well-intentioned he may have been at first.
Luckily, he later realized he was going a bit overboard and began reevaluating his perspective. Good for you, Mags. It's really tough to recognize when you're the baddie.
It took time and patience not just from Magneto, but also from his peers. Yet eventually, his path was completely changed. He even became a leader for Xavier's X-Men.
But don't let his new goody two-shoes ways fool you. Whenever there's a threat to mutants, you can bet Magneto will be there to annihilate it. Or ever, by any means necessary.
This episode of Death Battle is sponsored by HelloFresh.
With HelloFresh
Gifts.
HelloFresh,
A new type of bomb was set off over Tokyo, and 9 hours later began the Third World War.
Welcome to 2030, or 2019 if you're watching the anime. The buildings are taller, the motorcycles are cooler, and the future is brighter. Oh, wait, not really. If you find yourself in the Capsule Gang, you'll meet Shotaro Kaneda, who's like your textbook anime Chad. Gets the ladies, beats the baddies, and cops the sweetest rigs. Man, I need to get me one of those.
And then there's the little brother of the group, Kaneda's best friend, Tetsuo Shima. He's, well...
the exact opposite. A total wimp. As a kid, Tetsuo in his college thesis forehead got bullied for being the new kid at the orphanage. That's until Big Bro Kaneda came to the rescue.
Eventually, the two went to vocational school together and formed the Capsules. But Tetsuo was never satisfied with Kaneda being the leader of the pack. Tetsuo desired more than anything to be top dog.
Oh, I can just see that monkey's paw curling in my mind. Or that kid walking down the street. Shit, Tetsuo, watch out, you're gonna... That definitely should have killed him. But since it didn't, Tetsuo earned himself a ticket to military confinement. Turns out they had an under-the-table program for developing child superweapons.
In the same program that backfired and jump-started the war, Tetsuo became Japan's Esper number 41.
He may not have been a natural with bikes, baddies, or babes, but this telekinesis stuff hit different. He walked out of that hospital ward effortlessly flying, reading minds, and blending people into strawberry jelly. Tetsuo got what he wanted. Power, along with the hunger for more of it.
A hunger that used to only be satiated with drugs. And not just any gateway drug, pills so potent that a single gram of the stuff could kill you.
So, pretty bad. Kinda reminds me of college days, huh, Snow Wizard?
Tetsuo's main ability is his constantly increasing psionic energy, growing more and more powerful over time. This is due to Tetsuo's link to, quote, the memories of the universe, end quote. It's weird.
Either way, Tetsuo leveled up from lame gangbuster to certified badass. This guy is a walking natural disaster. His telekinesis can shake the planet, easily cause earthquakes over a dozen miles below the surface. He can summon psychic barriers for defense and crush foes with freaking gravity wells. He can dart around as a literal bolt of lightning or even teleport in an instant.
Tetsuo's telekinesis can be so precise he can target and obliterate specific parts of the body. He can heal severe wounds quickly, but even after losing a whole limb, he can craft a new one using whatever nearby materials he wants.
With these powers, Top Dog Kaneda didn't matter anymore. Who needed his approval? Tetsuo tasted that good shit and he was hooked. And when he found out another Esper named Akira could deal him even more power, he rampaged through Tokyo to find him.
And this is where versions of the story differ.
Spoilers ahoy!
You may be familiar with the 1988 animation, where Akira had been dissected for research. However, in the original manga, Akira is not only alive, but even more powerful.
Once that little runt nuked Tokyo, Tetsuo would erect the Great Tokyo Empire with Akira and himself as its leaders. But he ended up just abusing the position for endless sex and inflating his ego.
With Kaneda's rebellion at his front door, Tetsuo took a turn for the worse. He had to fight.
Tetsuo's defeated other powerful Espers, dodged light-speed lasers, and jumped to the moon faster than anyone could blink, and then punched a big old hole in it. And if you ask, Boomerstick, wouldn't that mess up gravity on Earth? You would be right, because it totally did. Screw the planet, I guess. Stupid moon.
Which brings us to Tetsuo's folly. His abuse of his powers spiraled until he lost control. Unfortunately for Kaneda's rebellion, this did not make Tetsuo an easier enemy to confront. Exactly opposite, in fact, has Tetsuo painfully mutated into an unstoppable behemoth.
Yep, that's not totally disturbing at all.
I'm happy to say the manga's version is even more disturbing.
I mean, I know babies can be monsters, but that's a whole nother level.
It is pain incarnate. I can relate. Another Esper described Tetsuo's struggle as ego death, which has multiple definitions, but in this case is likely symbolic of the version attributed to drug use.
Yeah, it's described as a shedding of one's own identity, like how LSD can emulate a wild out-of-body experience, and you come back with a new perspective. Though this is maybe a little more extreme. In fact, you could say Tetsuo was shedding his human body to play with the powers of a god.
I wish I could shed out of my body, but in this case, Tetsuo going full out of body meant becoming a...
Para que entendáis, ¿vale? ¿Por qué va a ganar Magneto, ¿vale? Tetsuo puede parar la Tierra, ¿vale? Puede borrar la Luna y romperla. Magneto peleó contra Phoenix Force, que puede destruir planetas. Gana Magneto. Seguramente ese Magneto que peleó contra Phoenix Force tenía un dopaje exagerado, estilo, no sé, pero esta pelea es la mierda, así que...
Amount of raw, ever-expanding energy.
Which almost nuked Tokyo all over again. And those explosions are not normal. I would know.
Top scientists in both the manga and animated versions describe these explosions as births of a new universe.
Given its properties of nuclear fusion and proton collapse, Tetsuo's mutated form was likely creating a Big Bang.
You know, the thing that started our whole universe?
Right. In the manga, it instead ended the Espers and their abilities once and for all. A testament that humankind is unsuited to wield the powers of the divine.
Though the anime is even more trippy. Thanks to Akira and his buddies, Tetsuo got so high on ego death, he ascended time-space to become god of a new universe. Kinda worth it, right?
And yet, Canada kept his empire up in his honor, now as the Great Akira Empire. Ironically, in death, Tetsuo finally received the attention he so desperately craved.
This episode of Death Battle is sponsored by Bespoke Post.
Take your summer adventures to the next level with Bespoke. All right, the combatants are set. We've run the data through all possibilities.
It's time for a death battle!
Sorpréndeme.
Even in Japan, they fail to recognize our superiority.
Wrong country, Grandpa! You're an Akira turf now! You're dead meat!
Impudent child!
The hell are you calling child? I make the rules around here!
You're wasting my time. Parlor tricks for the master of magnetism.
Es un edificio, Magneto no puede. Ya, podría hacer eso. Podría hacer eso de cojones y ganar ya, es verdad. Es telequinesis, puede aplastarlo y ya está. Puede aplastar su cuerpo y transformarlo en puré. ¿Sabéis lo que hace de Collector en The Old House? Eso. ¡Oh, no! ¡Magneto va a perder! ¡Ha perdido el casco! ¡Oh! ¡No, Magneto! ¡Oh, no! ¿Quién lo iba a decir?
I'll handle this on my own. Not weak. Die! Hurts. Help me.
Claro que sí. ¿Por qué no? Me la creí. Me la creí. Me la creí. Me la creí por un segundo. Me la creí por un segundo. Buena pelea. Me la creí. Me la creí, me la creí.
You are welcome.
Me la creí, me la creí. Acaba de atrapar el Big Bang.
Tetsuo! I'm never doing that again.
Tetsuo's esoteric telekinesis and other bizarre abilities certainly gave Magneto pause, but the Master of Magnetism had greater control over his foe.
The numbers don't lie. Tetsuo cratering the moon was insane, but Magneto punched Iron Man with the force of the sun. And while Tetsuo jumped all the way to the moon, Magneto could move across galaxies.
Against Tetsuo in his human form, Magneto obviously held a sizable advantage in power and speed.
But stats aren't all that matters. With his precise telekinesis, Tetsuo could just target Magneto's organs. GG, right?
Yes, but Magneto had similar skills. There are very few substances on Earth that lack any metallic or magnetic component. And
no, porque tiene telequinesis. Sencillamente la habilidad de Tetsuo es mejor. Tan simple, es la versión mejorada. Sí, Magneto podría transformar su sangre en metal. Sí, da igual. Tetsuo se bloquearía porque controla la telequinesis. Joder, es que no. Esta es la típica pelea en la cual un personaje tiene una habilidad demasiado rota. A secas. No hay estadísticas, no hay poder, no hay gilipolleces de esta basura de mierda que me van a poner ahora. Sencillamente Tetsuo gana porque tiene una habilidad demasiado rota. Pero sí, pon las cosas que quieras.
Magneto is very creative with his powers,
which he could use to predict Tetsuo's teleportation and even shut down his telekinesis. And his scraps with Xavier prove he could handle Tetsuo's messing with his head. The biggest challenge for...
Como acabé de ver, en un cómic predijo a alguien que tenía telequinesis, en un cómic predijo que alguien tenía esto, en un cómic, ¿lo veis? Tenemos un manga de nada contra décadas de contenido, en las cuales uno era gay, seguramente. En uno se fusiona con el profesor X. ¡Qué puta basura! No me da pena ver peleas de anime en sus mangas. No me merece.
Especially given how the detonations from this form were compared to that of a Big Bang. Although the authenticity of that observation is questionable. In truth, the Big Bang was a sudden expansion of matter on a universal scale, whereas Tetsuo's explosions are more akin to nuclear blasts, clearly intentional given the post-war symbolism of the Akira story.
The whole creating an alternate universe bit wasn't even part of the original material, so we can't exactly call it canon.
But let's just say the comparison wasn't superfluous.
Acaban de decir que no pueden considerar canon algo de un anime manga. Muy bien.
Let's say Tetsuo did in fact cause a Big Bang capable of creating or destroying an entire universe, alternate or otherwise.
Turns out Magneto had the tools to stop that too. Helmet Head could overpower Hercules, who was strong enough to hold up the skies of Olympus, which is literally heaven and an alternate universe.
This doesn't necessarily mean Magneto could easily destroy a universe with a snap of his fingers, but it does prove he can match a similar level of power. And context is everything. Tetsuo's Big Bang eruption specifically exhibited proton collapse, meaning its atomic structure was primarily an unstable mess of neutrons and electrons. And Magneto has detected and commanded unstable electrons before. This means Magneto had every means available to take control over this Big Bang.
Damn, and I thought he could just move some metal around. It's like the question posed by some of the greatest prophets of our time. Fucking magnets. How do they even work?
Magneto's astonishing power and intelligent control over all things magnetism triumphed in the end.
Tetsuo pushed his luck, but didn't have the metal to pull off the win.
The winner is Magneto.
Sorpréndeme.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you'd like to directly support the whole Death Battle team, click that join button and consider becoming a member. We'd really appreciate it. Hope you like the next one.
¿Votar? ¿Hércules? ¡Oh! Hércules contra Sun Wukong. Gana Sun Wukong de paliza. Gana Sun Wukong de paliza, tete. Hércules es un mierda seca. Sun Wukong se folló a todos. Tuvo que venir Deus Ex Machina Buda a decirle ¡quieto! O sea, ¿qué ha hecho Hércules? Nada, es que comparación. A ver. Bueno, recordad que pongo la votación en los comentarios, ¿no? ¿Pondrán mitología o pondrán series? Pondrán mitología, ¿no? O sea... Solo el bastón de Wukong es que... O sea, ¿cuál es la proeza más grande que ha hecho Hércules en fuerza? ¿Vale? Porque al fin y al cabo, Hércules sencillamente es fuerza. O sea, Wukong tiene muchas habilidades. Para empezar, se puede multiplicar. Puede volar con la nube. ¿Qué técnicamente he hecho? La prueba más fuerte de Hércules, según la mitología, ¿llegó a cargar el planeta? ¿Algún segundo con Atlas? ¿O no? Es que hay mucha mitología por en medio, tío. Hay mucha mitología por en medio. Están las 12 pruebas, ¿no? Están las 12 pruebas, pero básicamente eso. O sea, básicamente Hércules es muy fuerte, pero es que la fuerza no lo es todo. Pero bueno, dale a like.